All right, it's that time again. Welcome back to another episode of Politics as Usual. It's an ironic name, I think, this episode for real, because I don't think if anything's not usual right now, it's politics. We're in I don't know what year it actually is right now. It's sometime in the 1800s. We're getting real close to duels and to people settling scores in the street here. But before we go too far down the road, I'm excited about this show. We got an awesome guest, somebody that was on the short list when we first started putting this show together and thinking about people that would add something to it. But before we go down that road, definitely want to introduce the host of the program, the good brother DeMarco Davidson.
Hey,
DeMarco, what's going on,
everybody?
brother?
Welcome back to Politics as Usual. You gotta make a face when you say it too, right? Like, as usual. Are you sure? Like, because it's not nothing is sure right now. Nothing is but we already know politics definitely run our lives in some way, shape, form, or fashion, and that's one of the reasons why we do the show, to let people know what's going on, and really hopefully even focusing on a local standpoint, on a statewide standpoint, but how does all the impact on a national level as well. And I'm so excited about the current guest we have tonight, because it's somebody who really inspired me to run when I ran for Congress, who really assisted me, who really set me down and shared with me quite a bit of information, told me where success could be had, where failures could be had as well. So it wasn't just like he wasn't pro me, anti somebody else. He was like, I'm looking for people who are really about the people of St. Louis and really focus on Missouri, but again, who can really elevate us on a national level too. So without further ado, and I hope I don't know if this is publicly known as well, but the new Missouri Democratic chair.
Love. Yes.
Mike Butler, St. Louis City Recorder of Deeds, Mike Butler. That's again, I just found out today, he's the first African American St. Louis City Recorder of Deeds. Is that correct?
That's correct. What's up?
African American Missouri Democratic chair.
Correct. First black, and keep believing, 2020, first black ever to be elected Missouri Democratic Party chair. And in 2018, the first black ever elected to record deeds in the city of St. Louis. Now it's a blessing to be on the call with y'all and on the Zoom and on the podcast, man. I saw the first episode and I was hooked, man. I'm hooked. So I'm a fan, and I'm just glad to be a part of the process.
Yeah, man, we appreciate you.
We're also representing Alabama A&M as well, as y'all see.
Yeah.
Definitely, Alabama A&M, they're doing something right. From Chris Carter to Don Calloway to Mike Butler, they're doing something right.
Yeah, we are.
Tell us a little bit of just your background of all different positions you've held as well.
Slub, yeah. So I started out in politics, honestly, as an intern. I interned in the state legislature for State Representative Mary Wynn Still while I was in grad school at the University of Missouri Columbia. Right, of course, after I left Alabama A&M University. I then, after my internship there for a semester, I was hired on as Mary Still's legislative aide. So I spent 2 years as a staffer and 1 year in her office and another year in State Senator Robin Wright Jones's office. Important to note that I was the only black male staffer in the entire state Senate at the time when I worked for Robin Wright Jones. So there were other black women, but I was the only black male staffer in the Senate. Well, we had two black men. We had the only black male staffers in the Senate. So it was me and John Bowman, actually. So I give them it was two of them. I was definitely the only legislative aide. And then after, when I was thinking about running for office, it was 2012. Redistricting had just occurred. I considered running for state representative, and I had kind of decided not to, and just gonna stay working for the state senator. And it was our own friend, then State Representative Chris Carter, who called me and said, "Hey," I never forget. He called me on the phone. He was like, "My chapter brother, Gamma Phi Nuke, says, where do you live?" And I was like, "What? What do you mean?" He's like, "Where do you live, bro?" I was like, "Oh, I live in South City." He's like, "We're in South City." "Well, it don't even matter because you can run any district in the city. Like, I need you to run for the state rep district." I was like, "What? What are you talking? Which one?" He's like, "This right here against this cat." I was like, "Oh, well, let me." I told him, I didn't say yes. I said, let me think about it. Let me research it, like we did, like we talked before tomorrow. Research the district, research, demographics, census data, all the different election results in the past. And it was weird because I had to research all the different state representative districts that came in, to it. And before I knew it, I was like, "Hey, I can win this. I can win this race." And the rest is history, man. I ran in 2012. against an opponent who had the mayor's endorsement, the president board of alderman's endorsement, 80% of our elected officials supporting him. Dude had $80,000 to my $12,000, and I won by 24% in that race because of the research that I did early on. And since then, I was a state representative for 6 years, left there, the legislature as like the House Democratic Caucus chair, ran for recorder of deeds to get closer to the city, won that race against a 38-year incumbent by almost 10 points in 2018. And immediately after I won that, was selected to be the St. Louis City Democratic Caucus chair and the recorder of deeds at the exact same time, which was very powerful for me to do. My first, right before I was sworn in City Hall. And recently was just, in a sense, promoted to the state of Missouri Democratic Party chair. So now I'm both the recorder of deeds and the MDP chair. And I'm just blessed to be able, at this time, when I feel there's a generational shift going on in politics, to be able to lead that generational shift here in the state and move it in a progressive yet pro-Black centered way that will shape the politics for us moving forward for decades.
Man, incredible, man. And again, congratulations. And this is one reason why we want to make sure when we have people on this show, that is people that not just have opinions and ideals. No, these are people who actually have implemented and actually have won, and in winning in areas that are not easy to win, right? So with that being said, when it comes to being the first of something, right? Like, what type of pressures have you seen? Like, a lot of people always talk bad about, or talk like Barack Obama should have did, right? He was the first Black president of America.
Those are called sideline comments, because those are the things it's easy to say when you're watching somebody do it, but you don't know what's going on when you're actually in the seat.
Exactly. Yeah.
Monday morning quarterbacking.
Right.
I think the first thing with that, especially like being the first Black, is it ain't as hard as people think it is. Like, I've always found that Black leaders and sometimes Black politicians, a lot of people just want to be the best Black person. And I've never wanted to be the best Black. I want to be the best in general. So it has led me to see other opportunities that some Black people don't feel are open to them. I've never run against a Black candidate, even for MDP chair. Like I don't run in just Black spaces. Even though I did represent a majority Black district. I was the only Black candidate running. When I ran for committee, man, I'm in a majority Black ward, but I was the only Black person running. So I don't run in just Black spaces. MDP, of course, the state of Missouri is not a majority Black state. So I think that's number one, is to realize that there's no fear in running for positions that you don't feel like were made for us. Like, in a sense, if you're a competitor, everything is made for you to win. And I'm a former athlete. So, as long as I work hard and practice well, then I can win. So I think the pressure that comes with that is that when you win, I always say there's a way to win. And when you win, you don't want to, the pressure, obviously it's not pressure to me, but I can understand for others, comes where you have to actually change something. You have to do something next. And I think it's important to know Rules for Radicals, written by Saul Alinsky a long time ago, one of the greatest radicals. A lot of people don't know how radical I am, because I think a lot of radicals have never read Saul Alinsky. They actually don't know what radicalism is that you have to understand a system before you can, and accept this system before you can change a system. And when you understand and accept that system for what it is, then you can say, hey, these parts are changeable, or these parts of the system can be changed immediately. These can be changed in 6 months. These may take 3 to 6 years. And when you understand that, then you're able to, then you can try to take the pressure off. Like, look, I want this done. I know it's going to take me 3 to 6 years to do this, but I know exactly what I can do immediately and get some goodwill and show folks that, where there were some shortcomings and some weaknesses. And I'm going to change that right now. And because I don't have to ask anybody. But honestly, when you understand those things, the timing of things, you don't necessarily have as much pressure because you know what's expected.
Mike, that's a hell of a way to look at that. And I think that's a smart way to approach anything. You should understand the depth of the water that you're in, and know when you need to be paddling and when you need to be swimming and what the direction the stream is going and all of that. But it goes back to what we were just talking about, right? If you're just on the outside and you're just, looking at this person to come in and part the sea, to pull the Moses Act and just walk straight through to the result that you want. I don't feel like that's a fair expectation of our politicians. And I definitely think that it gets even more intense when you have a black politician who's carrying the banner of you need to do something for us right now, which is where you're looking at it as saying, I'm just here to be the best that I can be in the role that I have. I'm not here just to be a black politician. I'm here to be the best, period. Yep. But that responsibility still hangs over minority leaders to still, I guess an easy way to put it, not forget where they came from, at least in the eyes of their constituents. Do you ever feel any point where like you're in there and you feel, even if it's just initially like, wait a minute, I need to remember that part? Or do you just, part of your plan, you always weave that in as a little bit of the plan of what you're doing when you're approaching policy?
I do plan everything. I'm in a strategic planning process for the Missouri Democratic Party right now. And I'm definitely a strategic planner. I try to plan things out years in advance. But I would say it's I do think that black voters are definitely the most forgiving and understanding voters in the country. And they as long as you communicate with black voters, then and show them where you're going, then in a lot of cases they'll believe. Like, I mean, Obama's a great example of that. I mean, we were very forgiving of Barack Obama for 8 years, man. It's only after we was like, after the 8th year, we was like, dang, when we thought it was gonna happen. Like, and some things did happen. I mean, there was some swag surfing at the White House that was really nice in the last year, and there was a lot of nice task force, and I'm sure Obama did some things, well, and towards the end. I will say I watched the Breakfast Club interview recently and was not impressed by his response to something, because I was like, maybe I'm gonna hear something that I didn't know about. He's gonna fight until he did like internally. Nah, I'm actually reading Obama's book right now. Very good book. But I think we feel a little duped because we were waiting on this thing that never really happened. So I will say this too. I think that a lot of black leaders, when they get to that level, that kind of and it's just the Obama-esque responsibility, that is part of leadership now, to say, hey, we got to do something. You got to come out with something at some point that is responsive to needs of the most needy, which is the black community. But once again, I think that I don't think that my experience is that black voters don't know that you're not going to be able to do anything immediately. And I mean, especially older black voters will say they absolutely want you to, and they need you to do something. But they'll say, hey, we're gonna give you a little time, and they're very, very welcoming and very patient with black leaders. In a sense, sometimes DeMarco will say too patient.
Heck yeah, way too patient, man. I mean, and I'm trying not to jump too far ahead in the show, man, because
jump. It's your show. Jump.
Yes.
If you want to. We'll give. I'm here to make sure we stay on task. You're here to get points off. Go.
Yeah. No, man, but we definitely now see the difference between a president who is going out with a bang in his last 2 weeks versus somebody who's like, we're gonna have a peaceful transition and all this other stuff. Like, nah, man. So, but that's I'm glad you brought in Saul Alinsky with the rules for radicals, or what radical really means. I encourage people to read that. Not necessarily subscribe to it like it's the Bible or anything.
Correct. Definitely don't.
Don't like. Yeah.
There's a thin line between behind rebellion and anarchy, as we saw this week. Be careful where you put your head at with it.
Definitely.
Yes, bro.
But before we jump into that, but you brought in about the systems you can change and the ones that may take more time, right? Mm-hmm. We recently just had, because we haven't had a show since the elections. We now have approval voting. It actually passed in St. Louis City, and depending on how well they do in St. Louis City, it's easier to suggest it for St. Louis County if ever they figure it out. With that being said, man, knowing that we are still like mostly cities of Democrats, right? And you being the chair of not just St. Louis City, St. Louis County, but of Missouri. What are your thoughts, man? What are your feelings about approval voting and how it actually could shape the state? Because that's happening in Kansas City too, right? They had it already in KC also. So what are your thoughts, man?
They have nonpartisan elections in KC, but not approval voting.
Okay. Okay.
I do think that approval voting would help the Democratic Party in general statewide.
Hey, Mike, could you before you go into cause, could you break down approval voting a little bit, just in case somebody's not, as familiar with it?
Very good point. So approval voting is a new way to vote that is been passed through a ballot initiative through St. Louis City, which means that you can during an election, you can vote for as many people as you want and many folks as you approve of in the primary election. And all those, so you can vote for me and DeMarco and not Matt, or if you love all of us, you can vote for all three of us in the primary election, or you can just vote for Mike Butler. You have the choice to just vote for who you approve of, who you like. And then the top two vote getters, let's say that 10 people voted for me and DeMarco, and then 10 people voted for just DeMarco and Matt, and then one person voted for just me out of those 21. That means that Mike Butler and DeMarco will make it to the general election. The top two vote getters get to go to the general election for a runoff election, and that it pretty much keeps the focus on issues and not just individuals. Because if you have people like me and DeMarco who share the same issues, but not necessarily, so we don't split the vote on each other, that we can still, if those issues are the most prominent, we can still make it to the runoff, and then the issues that we differ with, we can people will figure out in the general election. But it's a brand new way. St. Louis City is the first major city to adopt it as a way to vote. The nonpartisan version of it is normal, like Marco mentioned. KC, Chicago, San Francisco, other cities have nonpartisan elections. But San Francisco has a version called ranked choice, where you can vote for multiple people, but you rank them in your first choice, your second choice, your third choice, your fourth choice.
It's a weighted vote.
I like approval voting because it seems a little simpler than ranked choice, but it still allows you to mark that to a voter to say, hey, I like multiple people, not just one. So with approval voting in St. Louis, I think statewide it would work for us very well. Approval voting theoretically and in practice helps to drive out issues and not just people and parties in general. And there are a lot of and it also does not favor minority populations of radical minorities, like extreme conservatives, and some will say even extreme progressives. It really focuses more on issues that everybody can agree on. And if we had this statewide, I believe that there'd be a lot more moderate Republicans who weren't so Tea Party-ish or pro-Trump folks would not win as many elections in a lot of these very red districts that still support, decriminalizing or medical marijuana, support Clean Missouri, supported other portions of, Democratic policies. So, but in the city, you're right, DeMarco, it's got to go off pretty well. We've got to inform folks about what their new rights are and how the process works. I think in the city, you're going to see, I'm hoping you'll see 2 Black candidates make it to the runoff. You're going to see folks voting based on issues, and African Americans who have felt in the past disenfranchised, and that the process is disingenuous towards their needs. I will say, you have seen approval voting work already in the mayor's race. Not too long after approval voting was passed, Lida Crewson decided she wasn't going to run for re-election. And I would definitely give that a little bit to the fact that the way she won last time with a minority of voters and with a small subset of issues that were not popular issues, just doesn't bode well in a system that focuses on issues that the majority of people can get on board with.
And the field was super crowded with Black candidates as well.
Yes.
So it was easy for her just to walk through.
Yep, so 67% of voters voted for a Black candidate in the last mayor's race. 67% of St. Louis City voters voted for a Black candidate, and yet we did not have a Black mayor. I think we're going to see that similar numbers this time around in the city of St. Louis. I think we'll see a different result though at the end of the election.
That's what's up.
So let me ask you about this. We kind of talked about that. I want to throw back, but also kind of talk about where we're at right now. We talked about coming out of the Obama era and where we're kind of getting to with politics and having the number of Black candidates that we have now. What do you think about what we got from that? Do you think that the Obama era inspired a lot of the people that we have that are looking at it now, and maybe maybe we're looking at it in a new wave of politicians that are coming that saw that possibility? Maybe that's one of the long-term things that we got from it. I don't know. I'm just curious to know your thoughts.
That's great. That's a great conversation. And I'll see DeMarco, like DeMarco can really speak on this too. Like the truth, and this my perspective is that the Obama era is definitely over. Like, so the Obama changed politics. He did inspire me to run for office. I was a senior in college when he was running for president, and as soon as I was able to run for office, I ran for office. Well, and there were plenty other 20-something-year-olds, and if Chris was on, he'd be able to say he ran the same year Obama was running for president. But I'm a firm believer that Obama changed politics when he won the presidency, but Donald Trump changed politics as well in 2016. Like not just it wasn't an opposite way. It was in a different way in the same fashion. But there's something that happened in between there. Honestly, folks like DeMarco and Ferguson activists changed politics quite a bit more, man. I mean, I was an elected official in 2014 when Michael Brown was murdered, and before Michael Brown was murdered, the Police Officers Association was an endorsement that I received against a white candidate. I mean, that was an endorsement that I had sought, that I didn't necessarily sought after, but it was a normal Democrat endorsement. After Mike Brown was killed, I haven't interviewed since. It is after Mike Brown was killed. I mean, a lot of normal Democratic, a lot of titans were pretty much brought down in Democratic politics in general, including Barack Obama. I mean, that is in a sense a small stain on his tenure as president. Definitely exposed Governor Jay Nixon at the time, who was planning on running for president at the time. It exposed a lot of problems in the Democratic Party. But man, the activists across this country have changed politics just as much as Donald Trump and Barack Obama. I mean, clear. I'm not saying more. I'm saying just as much. I mean, it's similar. So politics has changed 3 times since 2008. 3 times. So the Obama era, in a sense, gave us the ability to believe that white folks will vote for Black people, and more so than we thought. And that still reigns true today. I think that's probably the main thing. Like I mentioned, about 67% of voters voted for a Black candidate in the city of St. Louis. A lot of those voters were white. There were close to half of them were white voters. But at the same time, we're definitely not in a post-racial society where race politics is erased, and where either party has the best interests of minorities, Black and brown people, or Asian API Americans at their best interests at heart, and that has to change.
Yeah, no, I wholeheartedly agree, man. I even here locally in St. Louis, I literally call it the Bruce Franks effect. Like to see Bruce Franks, who rose from a business owner, battle rapper, activist, who was in the streets on a regular basis before the murder of Mike Brown, and even afterwards, and definitely heavily when Mike Brown was murdered, and to see him rise up and then take on an incumbent who was part of a family dynasty as well. To see that happen, man, in real time, was just absolutely incredible. And I recognize that locally. But when I think about Obama, when I think about all of like the little Black boys, little Black girls who can see themselves as now president, like that was a dream fulfilled, right? Like that to believe that, one day you could be president. Like, okay, we can, right? Now I'm agreeing with Mike as well. Like Obama definitely, again, I always tell people, he could have done more, right? And at the same time, we have to recognize who Obama still was, and that's where I think the respectability politics out. But the fact that we even have that word now,
Yeah.
Like we didn't have this word in 2008. At least not. I didn't know it. If it did exist, we weren't.
It's one of those words. It's one of those words that became popular, like black on black crime, and we just kept using it. And it's
Right.
like, wait a minute, we got to unlearn this because
Exactly.
what does this really mean? What are we really saying when we say respectability politics? What are we really saying when we're saying black on black crime? We're making a very complex but also simple thing into something it doesn't need to be.
Exactly. So therefore, like that you know, when and even when Obama said that if I had a son, he would have looked like Trayvon Martin, and to see the visceral, vicious responses that people, that Americans, that politicians, that from different places, different angles came at him about that. Like they came at him for wearing a tan suit. They was like, oh, it's too unpresidential. Like everything, they tried to disqualify this man for everything he did, including the clothes he wore, even when he had his shirt off at the beach. Like you supposed to wear, like we knew we shouldn't see those pictures of the president, like everything. But again, it just showed the extreme of what happened on that level. But then what I think is also now different, and which I'm hoping for, and this is where go right into the national elections, especially with the president now being a Democrat, as well as the House and the Senate now also being Democrat. In 2008 was similar, but the Republicans at the time decided to go with the red map strategy, where they really focused on local politicians as well as governor races, and like completely took over certain states, where some of the states still have a stronghold in certain states, which is changing. And that's even where the whole concept of red state, blue state came from. Like that wasn't a thing before news channels started really color coordinating everything like Bloods and Crips all of a sudden. So therefore, we are now at another time frame like 2008, where it's a Democrat president, House, Senate, but people took their foot off the gas. And I'm always telling people, hey, we keeping our foot on the gas until they take their foot off our necks, because we learned that we cannot let up. We cannot let up. But what does that mean for us now, Mike? Like when it comes to, because again, like I tell people also, I'm an independent voter, right? I like Democrats more because of the issues and the values that they stand up for versus those Republicans that I know here locally, right? But what does that mean now for us, man? Like on a national level, and what policies can we expect, or should we even be fighting for to make sure, and not just policies, but how can we make sure the Democrats don't get lazy and take their foot off the gas again?
I agree. I think that one complaint I had during the primary election, at least for Democrats, is that it wasn't very policy based. And one critique I had of Joe Biden was that I didn't feel that there was a policy agenda that expressed the future of the party and of our country. And I think that that's still the same strategy that we're seeing from Democrats who are not considered progressive. I'm not going to call them, because some moderate Democrats get that tag wrong. Sometimes people tag me wrong in that. But the folks who are not considered progressive seem to have, an idea that the less I say on policy, the more folks I can bring into the fold. And that's not necessarily true. But also, I think that some progressives are not as forward thinking as they think they are either. I think some of the issues that are very important, of course, marijuana policy is extremely important, and drug policy is extremely important from a freedom perspective, but also from a criminal justice perspective. Marijuana policy, I think, is the fact that we have an executive branch that can pretty much decriminalize recreational marijuana long before a law is passed. That's something that's very important. I mean, the President Joe Biden can take marijuana from a stage 1, drug to a stage 2 or 3 almost immediately, and that will, change things in the hood really quickly. I mean, economic policy is something that most politicians don't really want to talk about, other than Bernie Sanders folks, and something I think a lot of progressive Bernie folks love to talk about, but really don't understand from a Black perspective. I mean, when it comes to more, fairness and mortgages, I mean, Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac are huge government-backed companies private companies that we have a huge amount of power over as from the federal government standpoint, that has been known to discriminate against Black folks and brown folks. I mean, that's huge economically. I mean, people like to talk about minimum wage. Minimum wage is just a very it's a small part of economics. I mean, you talk about commercial loans, government-backed commercial loans, access to government contracts. I mean, there is a lot of economic policy that is that I think is the next frontier of what our country should look like. Fairness. I mean, I'm a small business owner. You guys know I own a bar in South City, and my experience as an entrepreneur and a small business owner in the past 2 years has just. I already have a business degree. I knew a lot about economics. It's totally my. Did you know that in this country, our economy is set up that the rich pretty much get richer? And if I have $100,000 in the bank, I can get $100,000 like that. Mm-hmm. If I have $0 in the bank, I cannot get $100,000 for the life of me. Mm-hmm. That's how our economy is set up. Our economy is set up for entrepreneurs that if you need money, you can't get it. And if you have money, you can get it. You can get as much as you want. And there are plenty of policies that go along with that within our government. So I think fairness and economic help. I think most folks, whether they're Black, white, or brown, don't believe so much in jobs as they believe entrepreneurship and the ability to start their own business. And of course, marijuana policy and finding ways that we're not locking people up and I mean, there's difference around drug policy that could be the next frontier. Easy stuff.
So, Mike, I got a question for you, but DeMarco, I want your take on this as well, because I know that this is something that'll definitely light your keg up a little bit. So this is a conversation that I've seen, to back it up a little bit. Obviously, we saw the flip and what happened in Georgia, not only in the general election, but also in the runoff that we had earlier last week. And we saw what happened. I think it was one of the most case in point examples of the power of the Black vote. I mean, it is just very simple to the point that that's why the flip that happened in Georgia happened in not one, but 2 seats that gave the power of the Senate back to the Democratic Party.
Man, I got you on mind. I know you're going to set that up. Let's just have a conversation about that. I think it's deeper than that, Matt. Like, and I've been feeling this in why Missouri can't get to. It's more than just the power of the Black vote.
That's where I was going. You got it right there. You got it.
It's the power of Black leadership and the power of communities that embrace Black leaders and Black people. And in Georgia, it shouldn't be a surprise that Georgia was the first Southern state to do this because of Atlanta. And because the suburbs, like Atlanta has been Black Mecca for a while. And if I hear another, and this is my pet peeve right now. If I hear another person who doesn't look like Stacey Abrams, who has never been elected, that's like Stacey Abrams have, and who doesn't have the pedigree of Stacey Abrams, say they're gonna be the Stacey Abrams of Missouri, I'm gonna lose it, man. I'm gonna either one of those three. I'm gonna lose it because Stacey Abrams is not just some lady who did a bunch of voter registration drives. Stacey Abrams is the former House leader of the Democrats in the Georgia House. Like, she was a leader before she was registering voters. And you do think the only reason why she's Stacey Abrams before she was Stacey Abrams who she is now, she was Stacey Abrams working her butt off. The only reason why people would probably listen to her first because she was that House minority leader. And then but I guarantee you she had these same ideas before she was House minority leader. I guarantee you she had to deal with, even after she was out of the House, dealing with folks trying to tell her that she didn't know what she was talking about. I had this line, like, so they say it took Stacey Abrams 10 years to get to the point right now. 10 years. That means she started in 2010, right? I guarantee you there are people telling Stacey Abrams in 2010, you need to get the Barack Obama plan. And she probably was like, wait, nope. I got this. Don't worry. And now people are saying 2020, they're telling everybody, oh, you need to get the Stacey Abrams plan. No, we just need to get the Black woman plan, okay? Or the Black or the Black community plan. And the truth is, where it's more than just the voter registration, because that lets Democrats off the hook. And in some cases, what Republicans are going to do is they're going to say, as long as you register these Black people and get them out to vote, we're going to have a majority. The truth is, it's more, you've got to create communities where Black people feel comfortable, where Black people feel like they have a voice, where Black people are gaining, like Atlanta, like Savannah, like other areas in Georgia, where Black people were leading. There's been a Black mayor of the city of Atlanta for the past 10 years. Okay. So we're not going to have a whole bunch of Black voter registration in Black St. Louis if we don't have a Black mayor. That's just that simple. If we got a white mayor and a white county executive and white folks leading and a white county executive in St. Charles, then where do Black people feel they fit in and feel they need to vote, where they feel like their vote matters? So I mean, it's so much deeper. And I feel like a lot of Democrats in general are missing the point about what happened in Georgia. If Georgia wasn't just this fly-by-night election where a bunch of Black people got excited about Raphael Warnock. No, that was not the case. Black people have been cultivating and winning, and in some ways were pushed. Now I'm not saying they weren't allowed. They pushed other Democrats out of the way and gained power, and then that's what created the scenario for Georgia. Years later, it didn't happen immediately. Years later.
It goes back to the idea about what we were just talking about at the front when you were talking about your career to date. That's not an overnight success. You didn't just become, the leader of the Democratic Party in the state of Missouri. It didn't just happen.
Right.
I don't know any success that's worth having that's an overnight one, because if it is, it's fleeting at best. But, the question I have about that, when I see people say that about Missouri, Stacey Abrams of Missouri, how can we make St. Louis or Kansas City or whatever be like that? How much of a credit do you give to what's happened in Georgia and in Atlanta and the cities down there to the fact that it was welcoming and a desired place for other African Americans to go? Because that's not just a bunch of native Georgians that are down there casting that vote. It had to be a place that appealed to African Americans in the first place so that they would want to be there and be involved. How much of that plays a part in the role and why Missouri, although we have these Black cities and you say 67% Black vote in one of the largest cities in the state, we have that, but we're still so far away from that type of outcome.
Man, you're right. So that's the other half that people say, is that there were a lot of minorities and or progressive folks moving to Georgia. And that's truth. Like, and here's another thing I say to people. Where do you think they came from? St. Louis. They came from Missouri. In the past 10 years, people have been leaving St. Louis in flocks and going to Atlanta. Now they're going to Dallas, they're going to Charlotte, they're going to Houston,
Phoenix. Yeah.
Yes. So the part, as far as a policy question, it should, and policy as usual, is that we got to change our policies where we're keeping those folks in St. Louis. But to your point, Matt, we're attracting the suburban and the suburban growth. People say suburban growth in Georgia, as well as folks migrating to Georgia had a lot to do with, not just in Atlanta but in other places of Georgia, had a lot to do with the success. And that's absolutely right. It's a lot to do with success in Texas, a lot to do with success in Arizona, and of course for California for years, honestly.
Yeah.
But you're right. If we want to do that in Missouri, that's part of it. That definitely is part of it long term. That's definitely. I think that we have the votes here to be successful. It makes it way easier when hundreds of thousands of people are moving here that are progressive minded. But it's not impossible here in Missouri. If we want to do this immediately and not in 10 years, then we've got to cultivate the folks that are already here. And I think that that's where a lot of Missouri leaders miss the boat, is that I don't want folks to say, hey, we've got to go after, folks moving in, and we've got to make sure we're creating a space that's attractive to folks to move here to Missouri, because that's important for St. Louis. But what about the people who are already here? There's quite a bit we can do to make sure that Missouri is attractive to people who not to leave as well, just as much as it is for people to come and move here.
No, you bring up an excellent point, and just to go along with even the concept of Georgia, Georgia being actually having a 30% Black population, where Missouri only has a 12% population. So I'll tell people, like, be mindful, be careful before we start getting too high and mighty, right? Mm-hmm. And but at the same time, like, can it be done? I think it can. It's just a matter of finding the same shared values. And a lot of people in Missouri are hurting. It's just a matter of making sure we addressing it and exposing it correctly. One of the things when I think about how to make how to make an area attractive enough to stay, but even again attractive to come here. Is the different industries that we have are even allowed to come here. I recently read an article where a St. Louis-based company, a marijuana St. Louis-based company, actually opening up in another state, and we still wrestling with the medical marijuana laws here. We still wrestling with the fact that, like you said, if you got money already, great. You have to have almost $1 million liquid in cash and open up a medical marijuana facility here in St. Louis.
Right.
Like, again, that's not. I don't know that many people who just got liquid assets like that. And therefore the barriers of entry are tough or challenging, or almost ends up being one of the factors that eliminates people from being involved to become industry leaders. And that's one thing I've been sharing with people recently, like, how can we become industry leaders, or even be involved in industry leadership? For, again, medical marijuana, that you would think that would, especially in St. Louis City, St. Louis County, that should definitely be one of the things that, at least I think, my family would love to be involved in that industry. I guess only from my family standpoint, but the chance to actually be involved in the industry and lead it, and to even make it a discussion, a conversation about economics, about jobs, about tax rates on medical marijuana, or even having input on the pharmaceutical industry. Like, those conversations don't happen. They don't happen when the barriers are set and created and established by politicians, because to my understanding, that was established by the Missouri legislators. They the ones who said, hey, you got to have $1 million liquid in cash. And that also ended up opening up the realm of, okay, well, who got $1 million already and be able to establish a business plan? That it was people who were outside of Missouri. It was people from Illinois, it's people from Texas, it's people from other states that are now coming in and bringing in and coming in with that. So that was interesting to see that. And again, the majority of people were still not African American. I forgot the percentage of how many people were African American who actually did apply and actually got awarded. And I know it's another part about being a legislator. Our legislators can say, hey, you got to be this many minorities getting these type of contracts as well. This many people should get this. This many people should get these opportunities. So,
and what you're describing right there with that is the thing when we talk about, economic equality. It's got to be systematic as well, because I mean, Mike, you made the point of talking about barriers of entry. When you talk about, you need to be at $100,000 or you need to be at $1 million just in hand. And I don't know about y'all, but it's a very small amount of people I know who could just produce $1 million tomorrow if need be. And but when you talk about that, that's why there has to be pipelines and pathways to cultivate that type of business, because you can't just let me say you can't. The time and the likelihood to overcome the odds and to both be able to build a business up, to make it profitable, to then to be able to double your investment and to make it grow like that, that's a lot of hurdles. I mean, that's like running the 4,000 meters almost, and it's all hurdles. Like that's just not likely to happen, so that's what we talk about when we say, we want to see economic equality. We want to see equal pathways to entry and things like that. But to kind of go in a different direction here, those have been all the things that when you look at the temperature of politics in 2020, people were saying either A, didn't exist, or fought tooth and nail to make sure didn't happen. And that's why where we're at on this, the 10th day of 2021, we're seeing such a crazy temperature, and it's really making 2020 look like, that was just the tipping point. Now we're really about to play the game about what that's going to look like. So, Mike, I'll ask you, coming into everything turning over here, we're a week and a half or so away from inauguration. And while, that's a federal thing. And I absolutely believe that what the president does is so far away from the things that impact us in most times. I do think that there's an opportunity for some immediate changes to happen that can impact us down here in a way that it didn't happen in the past. So from your position, what are some of the things that you're going forward and saying, I want to see, because this is going to be in the best interest of my constituents, in this first 100 days that you hear talked about?
Man, so I think student loan forgiveness is huge. Even up to $50,000 would pretty much wipe out me and my wife's student loans. Look at Marco, like, shoot. I mean, that's huge. I mean, my credit score would go up pretty well with student. Go ahead, Marco.
Like the whole concept of getting loans, like you said, you got money, right? But now is the debt to income ratio. So if you have a bunch of debt and your income ain't that high, like the chances of you getting a loan for anything is steep. Like, is that
yes.
Just go apply for a credit card and see what happens. Ask for a fully loaded, stacked up credit card and see what happens for you.
Yeah, correct. Yeah, and before I started my business, I did a very good job of improving my credit. But I mean, it's just, a student loan forgiveness would be huge for a lot of people, including a lot of Black people. I think another low-hanging fruit, of course, like I said, is marijuana, the marijuana reform. Be able to change that in I think it's FDA from a different stage would have a huge impact on this country. So all the medical and recreational marijuana companies, many of them, all of them cannot have national accounts right now. And you pretty much set up a stage for it. I mean, people are keeping, in California, millions of dollars of cash in guarded by armed security guards because they can't put them in banks. I believe there's a provision that you can put in Missouri. You can put it in a Missouri bank. You can put but you can't put it in a bank that does any like national business. So
no Bank of America, no Wells Fargo, none of them.
Correct.
You gotta go to like St. Louis,
and they can't invest
or something.
And they can't invest in it. So and that's that's a barrier to industry for them, but that's another one. Like student loan forgiveness, change the stage of marijuana as a drug would be huge for our economy and huge for folks who haven't gotten any thoughts in the past. The truth is, I think that a lot of these low-hanging fruit, especially in our economy, I call them in a lot of cases, they're nonpartisan issues that because they're not bipartisan Congress people against them. They're just that there's so much money and so much control that rich people have over our federal government, not necessarily our local and our we do have quite a bit in local and state, but not necessarily as much. But rich people have so much in stock and in control of our federal government that we just don't become a priority. And something like student loan forgiveness should be a no-brainer. Like it's easy. I mean, it's easy and even if it's just 50,000 a piece, is huge. So I wish I could think of a third one, but those are just off top of the dome. Huge, would be huge, big for our economy and for people in general. Like, I mean, my life would change if I no longer had student loans to pay or had them on my credit. My life would absolutely change. And here's my point about like student loans in an economy, like about commercial loans. Like I could easily get a student loan and rack up $50,000 in student loan, which I don't have about that much. My wife does, but I can't get a $50,000 commercial loan to start a business. What if I didn't go to college and but I have a trade and I want to start a company and I'm a brother who wants to start a company. So I can make more money doing the company than I can with my degree. Honestly, I mean, shouldn't I be able to get 50 to 100 grand government backed loan from the SBA? Which you technically can, but really can't in this economy. And if we put the same focus that we did on Freddie and Fannie and with the guaranteed student loan program that we do on the Small Business Administration, there's another change they can do. And then put minority inclusion provisions in there, look through it through a racial equity lens like the activists created, not anybody in government. Man, could we change some things at the federal government level?
I'm here rooting for it. Everything.
I gotta do one more thing. It's a vision of mine. I gotta do one. I gotta say one more thing.
Take it, man. Go.
That's like a low hanging fruit. I was bear me this story for 4 minutes, and it brings like Barack Obama. Look at Barack. I was in Gary, Indiana, like maybe 6 months ago to do like
I'm glad you're still with us, then, brother. I appreciate that.
Gary, Indiana is actually not a bad place, bro. It's not a bad place. Like Gary, Indiana is actually kind of dope. It's kind of a dope spot. But I was in Gary, Indiana, like me and my wife just taking a social distance vacation in a less well-known beach. They have beaches in Gary, Indiana, y'all. Nobody ever knew. Whatever. We drove. I like to go see, like most Black, I like to go see the hood wherever I go. So went to go, we had a rental car, went to go see the hood. I drove. We stopped at I want to say it was Booker T. Washington High School. It was a major, definitely high school in the middle of the black community. It would have been like, let's say, the Sumner or the Vashon of Gary, Indiana. Parked there. No, first we went to go see Michael Jackson's home. That's how we got there. We went to see Michael Jackson's home. Michael Jackson's home. His home is in a rundown Gary, Indiana neighborhood. Michael Jackson is black, y'all. Michael Jackson, the Jackson 5 was, hey, they were black as black in Gary. Whatever. I see this high school from his home is actually on the back of a high school that I assume maybe he went to or not. We drive around to the high school and we're sitting in the parking lot of the high school, and on to the right is a black neighborhood that has been run down for 30 years. Michael Jackson's home neighborhood, run down. Every house, Michael Jackson's house is a shrine. Everything else there is boarded up, looks like North City.
Wow.
To the left of this high school with a huge rundown football field, huge, looks like it has great football history and track history. To the left is the projects. Looks just like the projects I used to live in. And I sat there and I told my wife, I said, this is what people are mad at Barack Obama about. This is why people voted for Barack. This is what they thought he was going to fix. And she was like, well, how's Barack Obama going to fix it? I was like, let me tell you how Barack Obama can fix this. When Barack Obama was president, he was right after No Child Left Behind. Federal dollars were brand new dollars to schools all across the country. Barack Obama could have changed some of the parameters. He had the opportunity, because everybody hated No Child Left Behind, to change those dollars to go towards low income schools or whatever. They could have put $5 million into this school and this football field for recreation. He's like, most importantly, the anchor of this, I was like, two, federal housing dollars, like tax credits for historic preservation or new or just low income housing tax credits would have, especially for historic preservation for Michael Jackson's neighborhood, could have been used to redo that neighborhood and spur some investment for folks. This is Michael Jackson's own neighborhood, right next to this high school. It's like, but biggest thing, it's like, baby, that project's over there, that is owned by the federal government itself. That whole housing project, low-income housing tax credits, direct payments from the housing authority local here, that money comes directly from the federal government. I was like, look, you put, let's say, $8 million to the projects, $4 million to the school building, and another tax credit is worth $5 million to the neighborhood, which will spur another probably $50 million in rebuilding the neighborhood. Man, you got a brand new neighborhood here, brand new projects, brand new high school, new neighborhood right here. It's like Barack Obama could have did that. You know what? And at the same time, Barack Obama had two stimulus programs all in one. But instead, during that presidency, they gave most of that stimulus money to what? Highways and, let's say, like
the automobile industry, wasn't it?
Say what?
Didn't he do it for the automobile industry as well?
Automobile industry and it was a lot of yeah, and then it was transportation. So they spent a lot of that transportation money in pickup districts. I mean, when you drive down Highway 70, if you're in Indiana and you see brand new rest stops, that was stimulus money. Brand new stuff like outside of urban areas, brand new stuff everywhere on highways and roads and bridges and stuff like that. That was stimulus money, because those were the government programs that they were going to put people back to work during the bad economy. What if they had to put people back to work in building up the new projects, building up neighborhoods, helping improve schools? That's the federal government can do whatever the heck it wants to. So I say that to say that another project I think is very low hanging fruit is something just like that. I would love one day to pitch to the Congressional Black Caucus to make that like a part of the agenda. Is like is a Black community rejuvenation that is solely focused around housing projects. And most of these housing projects have a historic school, so education, housing, and then housing projects, as well as just like a renovation of middle class housing as well. I mean, I could probably point to 40 neighborhoods across the country. If you did 40 neighborhoods, which is one for pretty close to every Congressional Black Caucus member in the House of Rep and Senate, over a course of 4 years, that's 160 neighborhoods in Black communities. That's low hanging fruit. That doesn't even take any law. It can be done strictly through the budget, and it's money that it's less money than you think. I mean, 160 million, or let's say 500 million. That's nothing compared to what we just gave out for COVID relief. Could totally redo Black communities across this country. But that's the type of thing that creates Black voter registrants, that create Black voters believing in government, that creates folks that say, you know what, Joe Biden, hey, man, I don't know what he think about criminal justice, but hey, he cleaned up the projects, though. He rebuilt the projects.
And I think that the point that you just made there about Biden and criminal justice is important, because one thing that I do believe to the heart of me is that Joe Biden most certainly is aware of the fact that there's a debt owed to the Black community for where he's at. And one thing that I absolutely do look for, to kind of answer the question that I asked you about what I look for through my perch, where I have absolutely no power to influence this at all, other than to call you and be like, Mike, can you bring this up next time you somewhere rapping with your people? But it's to say that those are the type of things we have to push for, because look at the challenges, the next challenge is coming up. And you asked me when we were chatting earlier about what do we talk about in chapter? I said, I'll tell you, here's one thing we talked about. How can we as a Black organization, Kappa Alpha Psi, help get the COVID vaccine to the Black community? Because there's going to be pathway issues that are going to happen. It's going to be hard for that to work and to get in front of all the people that need it, especially African Americans who always have a harder time getting healthcare. So what can we do to help with that? Well, one thing that I think can help when you talk about an urban redevelopment plan, like you're talking about, a sweeping one, what's that going to do if you redevelop the education system? It's going to help the areas around it to be in a better place. What's that going to do? Allow for more simple things that we might take for granted in some places, like a Walgreens or a CVS or things like that, so that when we have to say, let's get this vaccine in front of people, and this is not something that's going to go away once we get this one shot or whatever, this is going to be a continual thing that's going to have happen, and we're going to have access to. That's the type of thing that I look at and I say, all right, develop these areas so that we can have more access to the simple things that we're already spending money on. So that's the type of thing that I look at when I say I feel like Joe Biden understands there's a debt to the Black community, that I don't have that fear that he's going to leave it behind. Now, is he going to do everything on earth that we want him to do? No. Would Kamala Harris do everything on earth that we want for her to do? No, it's not going to happen. The reason why? There's just too many ways to break even. There's too many things that are wrong for the Black community for any one person to break even and to get it where it's at. But I do feel like we are going to have an opportunity to get something this time around that's not just, oh, you benefit from it because everybody benefits from it, like student loans or like, stimulus packages and more increased stimulus packages that do more than just get people $4 a day. Maybe I'm being idealistic, but I feel like people like yourself and people like some of the leaders that we have here are going to be able to ask for those things this time and actually get them.
So, yeah, I'm glad you brought that up, Matt, because I actually was about to ask Mike, like, is that something that needs like that? Because one, that's a fantastic idea. And then also to me personally, that is where when people say reparations, like to me, those type of rebuilding, reestablishing, and being able to protect our own Black communities, to me, that's part of reparations, part of it, right? So we need we want and need all that. But how is that something that we should be putting pressure on to our Congress people? Like, should we be making a push towards a Congresswoman like Cori Bush on that, like, and making and pushing that to not just Cori Bush, but all of the Democratic representatives, or not just Democratic representatives. Like, this is how you rebuild the communities. Should we be pushing that, like, for Cori Bush or possibly Josh Hawley?
Yes, we should. And Marco, I imagine me and you gonna work together on something like that in the next year or so.
Look forward to it.
You got it. So no, I think yes.
Break it here. We're gonna break it here on SOLC too.
Exactly. That is. I agree with you, man. I think part of just putting money into like building buildings does not solve the issue. And to your point about making sure that we have processes in place, and for the emergencies that come up, especially, you're right. Having brand new buildings in the communities don't mean that the vaccine's still gonna get there later on. It just means that we have what our other communities have, and we hope that it spurs investment like they do. But
we gotta avoid the what I call the Cardinals ballpark effect, When the Cardinals come into the neighborhood, put $5 million into a baseball stadium, have a player come out there that day, cut the ribbon, and you never see him again. And you go look at half those fields now, and they look like just like they did five months before they came there and did it. It has to be lasting change. It has to stop just being a one-time donation into black neighborhoods, into black causes. It has to be foundational pipelines for resources and people to stay there to use them the right way. Otherwise, it's a one-time gift. And it's just like, I could ask either of y'all, what'd y'all have for lunch last Monday? I don't fucking know. I don't remember. You know what I'm saying? But it's like, you do remember if you had a fire-ass Thanksgiving dinner, because that's a gift that keeps giving, and it's going to come back around next year to do again.
Love it. Love it. I agree. So we got to add what Matt's talking about too to it, which is in a lot of cases what I'm talking about, DeMarco, what you said we should bring to other folks, which we will, is maintenance costs. So in a budget, you can either put in a bill or put within the budget that you need like 20% for maintenance or 10% for maintenance costs moving forward, and also get folks hired through those programs and make sure they're hiring the right community folks, and not this is where organizations like yours come in handy, not just political allies and political cronies into these positions that don't do anything, but just real community people that want to get things done. So a lot of work to be done.
I ask you, man, like the black community has been once bitten, twice shy. I mean, when we think of specifically here in St. Louis, probably almost all of our parents either were or experienced or know somebody from Pruitt-Igoe. We think of places like Pruitt-Igoe where the government did these great things, but I'm glad Matt brought it up. It was a one-time thing, and and also the limitations on families and all that, like having a man in the house, all that stuff was completely just destroyed any success that could have came out of the Pruitt-Igoe projects or whatnot. So for me, I'm not gonna lie, it was a little triggering when you kept saying projects. I'm like, because I'm thinking of Pruitt-Igoe only because of my mother grew up in Pruitt-Igoe. A lot of old black people I know grew up in Pruitt-Igoe.
Yeah. My family came out of Blue Mire, not too far from Pruitt-Igoe.
Exactly.
My grandma was one of the first ones and the last ones living in Blue Mire. So, and I lived in the projects in Columbia, Missouri. But it's, I guess I can call it the projects. I mean, people call it low income housing now. Right. But I lived in the projects.
They're just not skyscraper projects, but they're projects.
Correct.
Community projects.
Right.
The projects in Columbia, Missouri look a lot like the projects in North St. Louis when you go 5 minutes away from Busch Stadium. They're sitting right there.
I definitely lived in a project in Rolla as well, and rooming houses and all that. Yeah, it's definitely, and so went to that point. The aspect of housing itself is definitely a broader issue, not just a suburban urban issue. It definitely is a statewide, nationwide issue that, again, we can definitely need to be putting pressure on our elected officials to address that and actually have a 20-30 year plan strategy for that, and not just a one-time gift. Yeah.
I'm glad you said that. I'm glad you said pressure on elected officials. Phenomenal segue. Couldn't have done it better if I could have asked myself. I don't know if you saw what happened this week. There's some people that got upset in the nation's capital, and there was one particular elected representative of the state of Missouri who saw fit to insert himself into the events, both coming and going. So I obviously you all know what's going on. People listening to the show, this is one of those things that everybody in the world has some awareness of. I'm just going to throw it out here this way, and then y'all can go do what y'all do with it. What the hell was Josh Hawley thinking?
He was thinking that he was not finished. I gotta be I gotta be careful what I say.
DeMarco gotta be careful. Go ahead.
I'm just saying, like, what I want to say was like he was thinking that like both of Trump's balls definitely don't fit in his mouth at the same time. That's what I want to say. But I'm not gonna say that about Josh Hawley. I never met the man. I don't know him. Yeah, man, he was concerned about his legacy and his right. He was hoping to be the next one in line for being able to run MAGA. That's just my opinion as well. I don't know, dude.
No, I think you're absolutely right. Josh Hawley wants to run for president, and he wants to get Trump's voters to support him. And I call him Josh Hawley because he does not deserve to be called a United States senator at this point. And to play political games to take it as many games as Republicans have played over the past 20 years with our own democracy and to shed doubt and confusion, but outright say that our democracy is and who was elected the president is incorrect and was fraudulently done, is gives so much weight to our enemies and so much weight to folks who don't and as you see, weight to folks to commit crimes that we thought they wouldn't. It's just Capitol was not only a contradiction to what people have believed about Black America for the past 4 years. We're gonna get in that in a sec, but it was a treasonous crime, man. Folks went to the United States Capitol with the idea of, they said, creating a rebellion against the United States government, man, and against the government that Josh Hawley is supposed to represent. And it is I can say it's karma that is crazy for the Republicans, because they have always, for the past 2 decades, and you say even before when the Dixiecrats joined them, they've always been okay with racism. They've known that they were I would say that most Republicans are not racist, but racism is not a deal breaker for them. And they've known that the folks that stormed the Capitol, they knew that these folks were voting for them, but it wasn't really until Trump and Sarah Palin really until Barack Obama won, that they courted these people, and that they courted folks who would have stormed the Capitol and gave them immense power within the process. And Josh Hawley is now a poster boy for that. This guy has been trying to doubly court those folks. And no, not people like me, the folks on this call, but literally talking directly to people who would storm the United States Capitol and destroy it in order for political gain. And that is dangerous to our democracy and dangerous to the safety of our country.
Yeah, and let's be clear, like, this was a failed coup. Like, in order, like and it was failed because and it was, I consider it a coup because they literally were trying to say, no, this person is going to remain in power and we're going to do that by eliminating this whole process, the whole democracy process of voting, of counting votes and things like that. Not only that, Josh Hawley went on Fox News the day before, and even the Fox News anchors were like, "Hey man, you wrong." Like, in anytime you bring up something, whatever he brought up different scenarios. It was like, no, this is where the issue was. There are people who are claiming that the votes in Georgia, Pennsylvania, and Arizona were not verified correctly, right? That was the issue. That's the first issue. The second issue is, does Congress have a say-so in that, right? Can they overturn the vote? In the scenario they brought up, in the scenario that Josh Hawley and so many others tried to bring up, is that, back in that one time, these votes weren't certified. Well, those votes were not certified then because the state did not have an electoral college establishment. Every single state has established and verified their electoral votes. Every single state. The election is over. There's nothing else to discuss. But we had people who kept saying, "Oh no, we think something was wrong, or we don't have any evidence. We think it's an opinion based," and that's where. But like you said, Mike, to get those people roused up to play on their lower fears, like to play on their fears, is ridiculous, and therefore the people who went to the Capitol was actually sharing that, hey, we don't want this process to continue. We want to maintain our leader, and we will do anything, say anything. They literally were saying, we're going to hang Pence. They were saying, where's Nancy at? Where's she at? Like, Pence had to go hide because he didn't agree with it. Everybody who disagreed with the current president was in jeopardy. That's a coup, because when you don't we don't have we don't want the change of power. That's a coup. Not only that, the only difference versus America's failed coup that we just had versus others is that we did not have the military. Like, they didn't have the military. But now we also see how many former military people keep coming out, like former lieutenant colonels, former veterans, former police officers were involved in the aspect. So they didn't have the
current elected officials.
Current elected officials, right? So this was by all means a coup, a
Marco,
failed
that's
coup.
That's why,
and it would have also been different. And this also about, to me, leadership, right? To me, everything starts and ends with leadership. If Donald Trump would have actually joined them and led, we would be having a completely different discussion right now. If he would have stayed with the crowd and walked in front of them, but he's not a leader like that. Like he's not a leader like that. But if he would have did that we would probably actually be in a whole different discussion right now too, right? Mm-hmm. So I don't know how much different, right? But because that coup was leaderless, like it did not have it wasn't leader full, nor was it leaderless, right? It didn't have any for real firm leaders. But if it would have had some leadership for real to it, we would be having a different discussion. And unfortunately, probably more bodies would be tallied up, unfortunately.
Well, the entire situation changes when you have the power that a sitting president of the United States carries just with where his feet land on the ground. I mean, you literally have the most powerful person in the world that's going to move forward, because that's a different type of movement if you have him leading that. That's a scary thing to think about. I think it's okay to say that is a scary thing to envision. The thing that I'm most interested in, and I think it's kind of a two-way path, is that, and I'll just ask the question, and I'd love to hear both of y'all thoughts about it. Josh Hawley, along with Ted Cruz, have been the people that have been put forward who have really been, let's say they're on an island right now. I don't know if it ends up becoming a peninsula that they can retreat through eventually, but it's definitely an island right now. What needs to happen there versus what do you think happens with the two of them? Like, is the state of Missouri going to accept Josh Hawley for another 4 years?
Man, Marco, I got to hope kind of because I want to say something too now that, but I don't think that. I think it remains to be seen what will happen 4 years from now. Me and DeMarco, 4 years is a lifetime, and it's 10 lifetimes in politics. It's 40 lifetimes in politics. So it remains to be seen. I'd say that that I believe Josh Hawley is actually trying to run for president. This may, to your point, Matt, this may keep him from running for president 4 years from now. And we're going to keep the pressure to make sure that somebody like him has no ability to ever run for the United States president. That may mean he will run for re-election here to the United States Senate. And I think what needs to happen on the ground is that that Democrats are organized, and Democrat voters and community partners are organized and ready to win. And in that we're because the truth is, I love what DeMarco said. If Donald Trump had been leading this thing, the truth is, I would take it a little further, man. I hadn't thought about it from the coup perspective, Marco. That's why I rock with you, bro. I think that Donald Trump tried to do it, but those generals and those remember the national defense, the 10 defense secretaries all did a letter maybe days before this vote because that was one of the most trying to do it.
That was one of the most astonishing things I've ever seen in my life.
Ever.
When you had Dick Cheney and Donald Rumsfeld, of all people, say enough is enough.
What that means, when you think about it from DeMarco's perspective now, they say that this guy was probably trying to do a coup. And in a sense, the fact that he was removed from the day and didn't denounce those, he still has to denounce those folks. Still hasn't. Shows that he was possible. I would say it's definitely within the realm of possibility he was a part of that, and then he tried to. I remember seeing on the news maybe weeks before those defense secretaries that the Joint Chiefs of Staff had kind of put out some statements that they were that there should be a transition. But that, to your point about the military, you're absolutely right. I hadn't thought about it from a coup perspective, but to this point of I think your question was. I can't remember your question, Matt, but what I would say is
it was about the futures within the state. Mm-hmm. We don't have to talk about Ted Cruz. That's Texas' problem, but we have a very
but here I would say from my perspective, I would say Donald Trump won by 17%. Josh Hawley beat Claire McCaskill by a little bit over 200,000 votes. and won by quite a decent margin. I can't remember the exact percentage right now. I would say that since Josh Hawley's win, the Republicans have increased their margin. I think since Josh Hawley has embarrassed the entire country and especially the state of Missouri, because the arguments that he made, everybody in Missouri knows that this guy painted himself as an Ivy League attorney. He knows he's lying. And people don't have to say that he's a liar to know that he's lying. And I think that there'll be hundreds of thousands of folks, maybe Republicans who don't want that representing in Missouri. But 4 years from now, who knows if those thoughts are going to change if we're not organized, if we're not ready. But also, how is it 200,000, 300,000, or is it 400,000?
So let me ask a follow-up question to that, because this is actually one that got sent to me by a watcher, a viewer of the show. Is the Democratic Party going to be ready with a suitable candidate to counter that run for Hawley when that seat opens up in 2024?
We'll have 10.
If not, what does it take to get to that point?
We'll have 10 of them. I've already been approached by one. There were. I heard before that there were several, even before the election, there were several folks that were eyeing Josh Hawley, because the guy's just too extreme to be a Missouri United States senator. He's just too extreme. We'll have several good candidates by 2024, and I will say that definitely takes some pressure off me to recruit the perfect person. I think I'll have a couple perfect people to choose from, and most likely, hopefully, maybe they'll go through a primary, and then as long as I help to keep it civil, that we'll have a few good choices, and that the best one will prevail, and that we'll have the best possible candidate against Josh Hawley in 2024, or any Republican in that case.
Right. Yeah. So no, I appreciate that as well, Mike, and knowing that Missouri, we have to go through because Blunt, to my understanding, I've heard he's stepping down. He's not running again. So we got to deal with that in 2022, and then Josh Hawley in 2024. So to a certain degree, if there's enough pressure, because there actually is a nice amount of pressure, again, coming from Congresswoman Cori Bush and other really from Republicans also, are asking people to step down, things like that, which is also a first. And I think we actually could be in a scenario where we are like Georgia, where we are voting for 2 U.S. senators in 2022. Like, that would be phenomenal. That would be phenomenal, because it also is synergy. It creates more synergy amongst the base, amongst the party, and what's at stake, right? So that's another reason why Georgia was different. It wasn't just one person running; it was 2, and knowing what's at stake. And so as well. So that's a whole nother aspect about Georgia. What I am concerned about, and my concern actually came before the assault, before the failed coup popped off on Wednesday, was when Mitch McConnell he was speaking. He was like, "Hey, this isn't right. This is a sham, right? This whole objection of the vote of the elections is ridiculous." But he said, "I've been a U.S. senator for 36 years." And I was like, wait a minute, I'm 39 right now. 36, that was the Reagan era. That was the war on crime. War on drugs era. That was that high extreme capitalism era. And he was one of the main people that interrupted and basically told Republicans, we're not rocking with anything from Obama. So he is to me still one of the most responsible people for the Bushes, for any Hawley, for anybody else, right? And for even Trump, like all the judges, all this stuff. He's extreme to me. I still look at him, millionaire Mitch McConnell, right? So when I think about that, I am concerned about the people who are still going along with, oh, well, I still vote Republican no matter what. I think that's going to be one of the hard things, especially here in Missouri. So to me, I do look forward to developing those relationships and discussing and hopefully again the policies and the issues, talking about issues that really do impact us on a statewide level. And I think that's, to me, that's going to be one of the changes. Does Hawley really care about stuff that's going on here in the state, or is he going to still get those? Is he still going to get the police association, endorsements although there were police officers killed, and I just heard today one of the police officers who was a Capitol Police actually committed suicide today.
Oh.
Like, yeah. Like, so, and now that that one of the things that had me cracking up, because none of it is funny was all said and done, but I was just like, and I find humor in some things every once in a while. I probably shouldn't find humor in, but I found humor in people who had on Trump shirts, wearing Confederate flags, screaming "F the police." like
pick a side. Like,
right. And they like stepping on the thin blue line flag and all that. So what's going to happen with that base anymore, right? And will that base continue to be fueled? Will there be another Josh Hawley-ish type person or another Trump person?
Got it.
Because that's what they're looking for. Because they have this so-called leader who isn't really a leader. He's not a leader. Trump isn't a leader for real. What happens when they do get a leader for real? Like, that's so, and can there actually, Trump always talked about building a wall. He built up a wall of communication, like to block off communication between people. That's what I'm looking forward to, figuring out if we can break down so we won't have another Josh Hawley or even somebody coming up and being like a Bill Clinton, right? Like you said, like Joe Biden, back to Joe Biden, being similar to in my eyes, Bill Clinton, where, hey, I love black people, but I'm good with black folks, and I'm good at any black church. Biden is good at any black church, right? Maybe not ours at St. John's, but most of the black churches he's probably good at, right? And what's going to happen is he going to continue to go along with that law and order spiel of like, hey, I'm here to clean up the crime in communities, like that's where we got to put pressure on or not if we don't. So I think that's where we're going to fall victim to still allowing the ground to be fertile for people to become that radical aspect of a Republican or whoever.
I would add this too, is that one thing that I think that one thing that's changed, I think even in the last year, that I think the Democratic Party needs to be careful of is that that party doesn't slip back in to some of the rhetoric that was really pulling it at the seams, really pulling the sleeves off of it when you had Bernie Sanders and Elizabeth Warren versus Joe Biden. Well, all three of them against each other in like some type of weird triple threat match. And you were taking this part of the base this way and another part of the base this way and another part that way. And people, I just remember the rhetoric. And obviously social media is a boom chamber, but it is a little bit of a fragment of the real conversation that's going on. People that wanted the same things for the most part going at each other in a way that was not productive to say, in the end, we're all going to end up in the same place. Maybe we just don't see it the same way. That's a hallway that I think the Democratic Party or people that have more of those progressive beliefs can't go back down. Because right now, when you talk about what the Republican Party is going to be, the Republican Party has to even figure out where it's going to be in a month, because it's breaking apart in a way like I've never seen it happen in real time. What happened last Wednesday sped forward the separation of what I've always said, where you have the Republican Party and you have MAGA, and you have a ton of people in the middle that are going to start deciding which corner they're going with now. And that's going to be a thing that I think that while there still are differences in what people want from Joe Biden and from the people that he's put into power, for the time being, let that happen. Don't get in the way of starting to pull each other apart as well, because let that work out.
Damn, that was good, bro. I gotta agree. I totally agree. I ain't got nothing to add to that.
We can't, like my dad always says, don't major in minors. You know what I'm saying? Like truly be invested in what has to be what has to happen in that moment. And that's one thing. That's what I'll say. And to be continued, of course. There's a lot more. That's a whole nother show. That's a whole nother thing we could talk about what that looks like. But we've been here for a little while, and I appreciate, Mike, you making time for us to have this conversation. I've learned a lot. You know what I'm saying? I definitely feel like it's something that everybody can take away something from. One thing I want to ask both of you, though, is that, going forward, focusing on taking care of your house and taking care of what's going on within our community, whatever portion of party, alignment it looks like. What are the things that you both really feel like right now people need to be focusing on? That's not necessarily on the news, but really focusing on to be ready for some of the changes coming ahead, both on the local and on the large scale picture?
Man, focusing on as far as politics as usual. Honestly, it's not politics on local. Of course, they should be focused on the mayor's race here locally, and or people should be focused on their own local elections. They're not here in St. Louis City. You definitely should be focusing on what's coming up in if you're in St. Louis County in 2022, and state and redistricting is coming up. So state rep and state senate redistricts, and of course who your state legislators are, and then the prosecuting attorney's race is going to be coming up in 2022 in local St. Louis County. But get your credit score right, man. Get your credit together. Get a either you're going to get a trade or a new degree. Like, focus on how you're going to get from under a boss and how you're going to help build a company, if you can, or work for or be ready to work for a company when one of your friends starts in the next 5 to 6 years. But honestly, at the end of the day, like, a credit score is a very big point. So it helps you buy a house, helps you or helps you start a business is very important. I think people should absolutely focus on, young brothers or older brothers, get your life together right, get your credit score right, so you can be ready to take advantage of any of the good programs that are going to come out.
Oh yeah. So as somebody who's involved in the stock market, I let people know that the stock market it's not the economy, right? Because 75% of the money that's in the stock market is from institutions, right? Not like little bitty like investors like me. But there are certain industries that will be changed in the next because of Biden's presidency. Biden does care about cancer and pharmaceuticals in that realm, right? He cares about medical marijuana. He cares about
and energy.
I'm about to say, electric vehicles, energy. So, if I'm looking at it from a financial standpoint, not just about investing, but figuring out, again, I'm a huge component of figuring out how can we be involved in this industry and become an industry leader, because these are brand new industries that are starting to grow, and we're talking about 100,000 times growth. So that's what I focus on when it comes to business, and making sure that your children, okay, are ready to understand that, dude. And some of our kids already know these things better than we do, but the kids who don't understand, if you don't understand blockchain, that concept, learn it if possible, right? Bitcoin, things like that. That's that. But when it comes to politics, I encourage all my friends and family to know who your local elected officials are and make sure they know you. Make sure your local elected officials know you, and not in a threatening way, not in a hey, like, call them, write them, let them know what you're thinking, and if possible, get with an organization that is working on the issues that you care about. I think this is we have, like you mentioned earlier, Mike, organizing. We are not going to get anything done if we are not organized. And there are a lot of people, man, that's doing a lot of amazing stuff. Case in point, man, there was an article that came out this past week, and it talked about a lot of the high top individuals doing stuff around changing the calls to when somebody has a medical issue or mental breakdown or something like that. Instead of calling the police, they call somebody else. They call a medical professional instead of calling the police, right? In the article, what you say, Matt?
You get a social worker involved in it.
Yeah, somebody that
has the skills to respond to that in a
exactly
fashion.
In the article, they talked about the mayor approving it and working with the St. Louis City Police Chief and all these other people. That's great. Awesome. I'm glad they have adopted the same things that grassroots organizations have been working on for the past 10 years. Okay. So there are organizations out here. If you all need any, people come to me on regular, like, who's working on this, who's focusing on that, please find an organization. And if you are somebody who actually do have the means, donate to these organizations as well. Because if come back full circle, going back to Georgia, right? We're talking about Georgia. Georgia had money going towards grassroots organizations that were knocking on doors, that were making those phone calls. It wasn't just the Democrat Party, right? And I think if nothing else, we have learned that we can't just rely just on a political party to be our saviors. It's time to save ourselves.
Amen to that, man. Well, hey, I think that's a perfect way to put a bow on this. Mike Butler, man, I appreciate the time. I appreciate the effort that you put forward on behalf of the community and the things that you're doing that maybe people don't see today, but they'll definitely feel the difference of down the road as well. Mike, where can people find out what you have out there, have be able to contact you if need be?
Twitter's at Mike Butler STL. Same on Facebook. Of course, you can email me at michael@missouridems.org. And I'll be there to respond, man. I'm all about getting people involved in the process.
Absolutely. Polo, take us home, man. Politics as usual. Usual is defined a little bit differently, but hey, we still here and we still trying to be the voice of the people for it, man. Oh, before we tune out, peace to our other usual co-host, Chris Carter. He'll be back in the saddle here soon as well. I know Mike is going to come back as soon as Chris comes back, so he can give him some trouble about it, because I know that was a big card for today. But Chris will be back in the saddle here shortly as well.
Yeah, so definitely, man, we thank everybody who's tuned in. For those who ever comment on Facebook or YouTube, I definitely respond. So please leave a comment, press the like button, share, subscribe, do all those great things, because this is a matter, like, we really want to lift this channel up to make sure that the voices are being heard of the people and getting the different ideas out there. And we definitely have some exciting guests lined up for the rest of this year. And I promise you, it's not just gonna be just a light skinned Kappa show. Okay, we got some great guys, some great. We are working on having, especially when it comes to the mayors, to county executives, county council members, and if there's anybody that you all think should be on the show, please let us know as well. Just get at us, and then we'll get back with you.
Drop a message to us on Facebook at SOLC Network. We always there. You can check out all the programming that's there that we've got here. Hey, we appreciate y'all. Keep tuning in. Peace.